I just first want to understand from you, from a perspective of the UN, that you have the UN sanctioned list of terrorists and terrorist linked individuals. What happens in this sort of situation, Mr. Akbaruddin, when so many of these individuals have now effectively become part of a government?
So before I start, I'd just like to congratulate you and NDTV. I understand today is your founding day,
Thank
33
you. Yes,
years of a journey, and I wish you all the best for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that said, the situation that the United Nations is facing is an extremely unusual one. It's one in which a non-state entity was designated as a terror organization and a threat to international peace and security, while it was a non-state entity. Today, that non-state group or entity and the individuals associated with it have captured state power. Now, this is an unusual occurrence because the United Nations treats terrorism not as a phenomenon of states. It sees terrorists as non-state entities. But here you have a non-state entity grabbing state power, and therefore they are unable to comprehend how to go about the next steps. Obviously,
so, yes, keep going,
obviously
sir.
Just a minute. Obviously, they will have to recalibrate this in taking into account a whole host of factors. And when there is a mix in international diplomacy, it means a conflict of interest, a convergence of interest. So you will have much of this pulls, to's and fro's before we come to a solution.
So in simple terms, just to explain to the ordinary viewer, the fact that you have a prime minister of a country who's on the UN global terror list, someone like Siraj Haqqani who's on multiple terror lists, what happens to them? Does this mean that can they travel to other countries? Can they trade, or are they now exempt? Will they not face justice? What happens?
So the UN designation list is not about justice. It's a preventive measure to try and control terrorists from moving around states and to try and control them from gaining financial support as well as arms and ammunition. Those measures have obviously failed. It's a breakdown of that regime.
But can they? Now have to but these afresh. Gentlemen, so it may have failed to at least prevent them from capturing power. But now that they've captured power, will these gentlemen still come under the ambit of the list? In other words, can they travel to other countries and whatnot?
No. Until there is a legal change in the regime, those stipulations stay. However, now that the ground realities has changed, there will obviously an effort to try and see how best to recalibrate it. Now, there are various ways to recalibrate it, either to continue this process or to have a more omnibus resolution which supersedes this and imposes sanctions on a state itself. Those are other options that are available. But for now, those options that are in place stay in place.
How worried are you, and how worried should India be?
So, from an Indian perspective, terrorism has been one of the cardinal features of our foreign policy even before 9/11. Let's not forget Taliban and the Kandahar hijack. India was a victim of this even prior to 9/11. For 20 years or more than 20 years, we've made this an important pillar of our foreign policy. That said, the ground realities have changed, and everybody has to take into account those ground realities. For a country like India, it's more difficult because we have been wedded to a concept. Our public opinion is sensitized to a concept. So it will take much more of an effort to try and calibrate to the new ground realities.
In simple terms, because I know you're a seasoned diplomat, but in simple terms, India is already officially talking to the Taliban. We know this. But this is again before this government was announced. Now you have people like Siraj Haqqani as Interior Minister and so on. I won't repeat what I just read out. Should we still be trying to talk to them?
So, Vasu, there are multiple levels of talking. One is an operational engagement. Operational engagement means at the ground level. We still have people there in Afghanistan who perhaps are Indian citizens or people of Indian origin who may want to come back. We have other interests. So there is no harm in having an operational level engagement to provide consular and other services to those Indian nationals.
Okay.
However, this does not mean automatically we recognize that state. That is going to be a much more difficult task.
Okay.
It is a diplomatic engagement that will take months, perhaps, before we move down that path fully. It will involve give and take. It will involve, after all, diplomacy is all about negotiation and bargaining.
All right.
The only way diplomats can work is through give and take.